I've made a video game. It's out on Steam, you should go and buy it now. Did you know it has a hidden cheat mode that I haven't told you about? Only about 24 people know about it, and it has a particular cheat that you're going to want to see, because I'm a big, dumb, immature moron. Stick around to the end of the video and I'll tell you all about it. I know, I'm sorry, but we're all just helpless pawns in the vicious game of the YouTube algorithm, so, you know, help me out. I was planning on a developer commentary let's play, but as it turns out, in a painfully humbling experience, I'm not actually that good at my own game. At least not in a way that would be interesting for you to watch. So instead I thought I'd show you some gameplay and talk about reIterate in a pretty balanced and reflective way. Lessons learned, achievements achieved, regrets regretted. You know, the usual. So join me as we go over the dizzying highs and crushing lows of my first proper Steam release. Let's talk game design. The good news is pretty much everybody likes it. I think I did a good job of getting the intention of reIterate across to people. I was upfront and transparent about the game I wanted to make, which, just to remind you, was literally a good 2D platformer. Not the best 2D platformer ever made, not a revolutionary paradigm shift in the landscape of interactive entertainment, just a good video game. And according to at least the Steam reviews, I nailed it. There's only one negative review and I think it's pretty fair. I definitely haven't obsessed over it, I absolutely didn't fly into an uncontrollable rage. And I'm certainly not still crying myself to sleep every night because somebody who unironically called themselves a brownie otter publicly called me out as lazy. Nope, totally fine. Seriously though, I think that's pretty good. It's not a game for everyone, but I think a positive point is that I made sure people who weren't going to like it knew they weren't going to like it before they spent money on it. I'm not going into the financials in this video, but it's times like this that I'm very glad for Steam's refund policy. I absolutely don't mind, and in fact encourage, if people buy it, try it for a bit, find out it's not for them, and then get their money back. It seems fair, player friendly, consumer friendly, and just generally a good thing. So if you want to go and buy it, try it out and then refund it later if it's not for you, I don't mind. Call it a 30-day money-back guarantee. You have my blessing. On the topic of consumer friendliness, I haven't yet come across a pirated copy of the game, which I choose to take as a positive, and not a signifier that maybe people don't care about the game enough to even bother pirating it. It's a positive, it's a win, it's fine. So what else is good? After how long I spent fixing boring bugs in a way that wasn't interesting enough to make a video about, I am so incredibly relieved to not have had 50 negative reviews pop up basically immediately, talking about how broken the game is. There is a single and I think unique issue affecting precisely one person, where for some reason their keyboard doesn't work. The controller does though, so that's fine, and what's amazing is they still left a positive review. So thanks to that guy for being a really good sport about it, because I have absolutely no idea what's going on there. I know it sounds so basic to say I am glad this game works, but seriously I am so glad this game works. Before this I'd never made anything that I would consider retail worthy. This is, as you all know, my first proper actual commercial release, which in my head came with a certain level of quality and functionality. I realise I could have just put out a busted up jank fest of a game and made a bunch of half-arsed apologies about how it's my first game and please be patient while I patch it up. But the thing you have to remember is I come from a time when you couldn't patch games once they were out. They came on solid plastic cartridges, and if they didn't work, that was it. They just didn't work forever. I think because I'm an old man, I'm still stuck in that mentality. To me, a game has to work when you buy it, otherwise it's just not good enough. On the topic of being an old man, I can't help but think of all the janky-ass busted up games I played as a kid, and some part of me gets a little swell of pride from being able to say, hey, I made a better game than that. Things that were released at full price, out in the wild on the shelves of Toys R Us, and I outdid them. On my own. And I don't know, that's kind of amazing. The times that I have gone back to reIterate since it was released, I'm still really pleased with how fluid and functional the game is on a basic level. You get into the game really quickly, there's a skip cutscene button, the game restarts as quickly as you can press the jump button, and there's little to no transition between the levels. This probably seems like another really basic thing to be impressed by, but I can't emphasise enough how important it was to me to be able to make something that just works effortlessly, since I'm asking you to spend money on it. These are the little things that add valuable retail quality to a game, and they're the points where a lot of games fall down. 97 menus, pop-ups, windows. I made a choice quite early into the final version's development that I wasn't going to have a screen saying you have died, please press a button, because if you've died, it's pretty obvious that you've died. I had a philosophy that I didn't want to coddle or baby my audience because I think you're all pretty smart, really. And putting up a big text box saying you're dead lol, press a button seemed a bit redundant. I know that's what you'd normally get in a game, but just because something is normally how we do it is no reason to carry on doing it. I've checked out a few reviews and impressions of the game, and I'm really pleased by the comparisons that some people have drawn to what influenced the design in the first place. More than one person has mentioned that it reminds them of Super Meat Boy, or Fred Wood's Love series, and if you go way back to the start of the devlog, you'll notice that these are things I had in mind when I started. I mean, it also occurs to me that maybe these are just comparisons by people who've watched the devlogs, but shush. Let me think I got something right, it's good for my self-confidence. reIterate has been played by a lot of different people from a lot of different experience backgrounds, and what's been really pleasing to me is to see how they're all getting on with it. Generally, reviews and player feedback seems to be that they've managed to get through the main game in 1 or 2 sittings, and I think general playtime for the normal mode is coming in at about 2 hours. I didn't do that on purpose, by the way. I really do want you to refund it if you don't like it. But I think £4.79 for a 2-hour experience, if you don't go in for the extra black edition or anything, is pretty good. I don't generally believe in the whole cost per hour metric, but if you look at the cost of a cinema ticket these days, it's a bargain really. Overall, I'm quite happy with the design of the player experience, which I think was at the heart of what I wanted to do with reIterate, namely to prove to you, my audience, that I know about game design. Pretty sure I can tick that one off the list, so you can go back to watching my videos and assuming I'm some sort of golden god, because obviously. Speaking of gods, shout out to Clone13 for providing the absolute best possible soundtrack for the game. Highly recommend that you go check out the devlog episode about the sound design, and you can get the standalone soundtrack on Spotify now. Also possibly in other places, I don't know, I should probably check. The soundtrack consistently comes up as a positive in reviews and player feedback, so it was absolutely on point for what I wanted. It sets such a futuristic tone, and I think sits underneath the player experience to sort of ease the suffering that they might get from dying 59 times on some of those trickier levels. I also really like the playlist skip feature that I added in, since as much as the soundtrack matches the tone and style of the game, I think it also stands really well on its own. So having it as an optional choice you can make to skip to your favourite track just makes sense to me. Little stroke of genius, quite proud of myself. So that's enough patting myself on the back. Time to talk about... There isn't any. It's perfect. I'm a golden god. No, but seriously. It occurs to me that maybe I ask too much of people. This is a thing that I've suffered with before, where I write stories that include subtext and room for the audience to draw their own conclusions, flesh out the gaps themselves, etc. I clearly shouldn't have done that, and I'm starting to realise why writing in games tends to be so dull and one note. It's because people generally aren't super brilliant at buying into intrigue, clues and gaps in their knowledge. Unless it's Five Nights at Freddy's, but I don't make games for children, so clearly I was doomed from the start. It is all fine though, because reIterate is planned as a trilogy, and it'll get a sequel that sort of fleshes out the background of the world. What I failed at was the delicate balance between giving the player just a nugget of kind of onboarding information so that they buy into the world and the underlying plot, and explaining enough that they feel like they should actually care. Portal did this really well. I did not make Portal. Remember about 2 minutes ago when I said it felt really good to make a game that works? I lied. It doesn't work. Not entirely anyway. For reasons I don't understand, which I think have to do with Construct 3's built-in janky quirks, the speedrun timer runs at a much faster speed than it should. I've looked at it, I've opened it up, I've frowned at the screen, but nothing's fixed it. So sadly it's just going to have to stay broken, because I don't think I have the skills at the moment to redo it in a way that would make it functionally useful. What do you mean I'm lazy? Shut up, brownie otter. Remember about 2 minutes ago when I said I'd done really well with the general difficulty curve of the game? I lied. No, okay, I didn't. That bit is still true. What I'm less impressed by, a long time after the fact, is a few of the 69 levels that I came up with. They're things that I'd change now if I was still in the testing and development phase, but they're mostly about individual spike or platform placements in very specific places. There's probably only 2 or 3 of these, which I think in a game with technically 138 levels isn't too bad. But it's still something that bothers me. I don't know if this is a relatable experience to anyone else, but I'm the kind of person who, if I notice a problem that only bugs me, will be bugged by it forever, even though I know full well that absolutely nobody else on Earth is even going to notice it exists, let alone be bothered by it. I put this down to the fact that at some point the game had to come out. I could have spent the next year going over and over and over every single level until they were exactly perfect. But then I'd have hated looking at the game even more than I already do, and I would have been in danger of scrapping game development altogether and moving to the countryside to become a goat farmer. Let's talk goat design. Remember about 2 minutes ago when I said I thought the game was really good value for money? I lied. Alright, again, I didn't. That bit is still true. I think it's worth the price I'm asking for it. But again, I don't know if this is a relatable feeling for anyone. I couldn't shake the sense that I could have and should have done more. My rational brain knows that by the time I'd reached the end of level 69, I had reasonably explored pretty much all of the mechanics that I'd decided to include in the game. There's only so much you can do with springs, spikes and falling platforms before you start repeating yourself. And what I didn't want to do was get to a point where later levels were just the original levels but harder. That to me seemed lazy. And I'm not lazy. Brownie otter. It's fine, I'm fine, it's fine. But then I think, well, could I have put in more mechanics then? Could I have expanded the repertoire of level design tools to let me expand the number of levels in the game? And yes, I could. But then the game would have taken even longer and I'd run dangerously close to the project-killing infection of scope creep. And like I said, it had to come out eventually. These are all thoughts that I have on a regular basis, bouncing backwards and forwards in the back of my head whenever I think about what reIterate eventually became. Did I do enough? Is it enough? And can I throw this imposter syndrome in the sea now? Because I've done something that objectively most people like, that has value, that proves that yes, Zane, you do know about game design. I tell myself that yes, on balance it's fine. I've done the job I set out to do. But sometimes I wonder, so I suppose let me know, validate my feelings. I'm sure the YouTube comment section is clearly the place to ask for positive reinforcement. What could possibly go wrong? So what have I learned from all of this, and what wisdom can I pass on to you, so that maybe you don't have to make the same mistakes that I did? I think the main lesson that I took from reIterate's development cycle is that I'm never going to be happy with anything, ever. I think I'm cursed. Nothing is ever going to be good enough, so I need to figure out where to draw the line of that'll do. I think I did that pretty well in the end. For reasons I've just outlined, I think the value is there, the content is there, and I think in the end, it's mostly left people wanting more. Whenever I do get around to reIterate 2, I'd like to think I've got a few people now who might actually be excited to see where it goes, and that's pretty good. I've also learned that even when I think I'm trimming the scope down to the bare minimum, I'm still over-scoping. There's so much stuff that over the last year or so was meant to be in the final product. Things like vertical levels, the wind mechanic, all of that, and it all got cut so that I could get a game out into the world. So if you, as a game developer, take one thing from my experience, it's that no matter how slim and efficient you think your scope currently is, if you've never finished a full game before, it probably isn't. It's up to you if you want to cut it down even further. I can't make that decision for you. But probably the most important lesson, and I'm going to end on a positive note with this, is that I can trust my instincts, my opinions, and generally myself. I do understand game design. I am not just spouting nonsense into the cold, uncaring, faceless void of YouTube. And I think you can attach value to the lessons and analysis that I try and put out on this channel. There's a basis now that I can point to proudly and say, here, this is what I think about video games, here's some proof. And I think that's worth more than whatever money I end up making from reIterate. Which is not to say you shouldn't go and buy it, because I need to upgrade to business class on my Disney World honeymoon. So, you know, if a couple of thousand of you could go and make a purchase, I'd really appreciate it. Now then, if you're still here, I believe I promised you... When you're on the main menu of the game, if you press the top left key on a standard UK keyboard, which looks like this, you'll end up at a black screen with a blinking cursor. This is the cheat menu. And there's a few things you can put in that might improve your reIterate experience. For all of them, you just type in the whole cheat and then press enter. If you've done it right, you'll be kicked back to the title screen and your cheat will be active. They deactivate when you close the game, so you can just close it down and restart to get rid of them. The first one is Exploding Pen, which is a reference to my favourite James Bond movie, and will make you invincible. The second is Gotta Go Fast, which I shouldn't need to explain to you, and will unlock Speedrun Mode immediately. The third is Unless You Live Hardcore, which is a reference to a movie called School of Rock that you should all go and watch because it's great, and will unlock Black Edition immediately. Then finally there's Not That I Know Of, which is a reference to Ghostbusters, and will unlock all of the decryption keys so you can read the optional backstory stuff straight away. The cheats won't save, but whatever you do with them will. Oh, hang on, I've missed one. If you've watched the devlog series, you might know that I've been plagued by one maddening question the entire time. A single, recurring question that has driven me to the point of insanity until I wanted to move to the aforementioned countryside and raise the aforementioned goats. And that question is, have you played Celeste? So put that in, and I think it'll answer your question. Like this video if you liked the video, and subscribe for more videos like the video you liked since you liked it. And I'll see you the next time I'm thinking, hey, let's talk game design.